My brother mocked me for not having a job. Then I fired him and his friends, who were on my payroll. So, what do you do these days, Rachel? The question hung in the air like a grenade with its pin pulled. I reached for my wine glass, buying myself a precious few seconds before I had to answer. Across the gleaming mahogany dining table, my younger brother Matt leaned forward, his smile sharp as a shark's. He already knew the answer, or thought he did. It was the same question he'd been asking me at every family dinner for the past 8 months, each time with growing satisfaction. I'm between projects at the moment, I replied evenly, meeting his gaze, taking some time to reevaluate my priorities. Matt's laugh was quick and dismissive. In other words, still unemployed. He turned to our parents, who exchanged uncomfortable glances. Mom, Dad, isn't it amazing how differently siblings can turn out? Your daughter, the once mighty Rachel Coleman, founder of Coleman Industries, now between projects for almost a year. Meanwhile, your son is closing million-dollar deals before lunch. I smiled tightly, feeling the familiar burn of irritation creeping up my neck. If only he knew. If only any of them knew. People think power comes from being seen, I said quietly. I know better. It comes from knowing when to stay invisible. Matt rolled his eyes. Fortune cookie wisdom won't pay your bills, sis. Our mother, ever the peacekeeper, quickly changed the subject. The salmon is lovely tonight, isn't it? I tried a new recipe, but the damage was done. Another family dinner, another opportunity for Matt to remind everyone that his sister, 8 years his senior and once his idol, had fallen from grace. The golden child turned cautionary tale. What no one at that table knew was that I, Rachel Coleman, was still the unstoppable force behind Coleman Industries, a multi-million-dollar company I had built from the ground up. I had stepped down as CEO, yes, but only from the public-facing role. I remained the silent majority owner, the shadow authority behind every major decision. The executive team that now supposedly ran the company answered to me, and only me, including, ironically, my brother Matt. Later that night, I sat on the balcony of my penthouse apartment, overlooking the city lights. My phone buzzed with an email notification from Coleman Industries CFO, quarterly reports showing another record-breaking profit margin. I smiled, thinking about Matt's smug face at dinner. My decision to step back had come after years of burnout. 16-hour workdays, constant travel, endless meetings and media appearances had taken their toll. I was 38 and exhausted to my bones. The day I woke up with chest pains from stress was the day I decided something had to change. So I orchestrated my exit, publicly. I announced my retirement, handed over the operational reins to a carefully selected executive team, and disappeared from the business headlines. But behind the scenes, I maintained ownership and ultimate control, with a small circle of trusted executives sworn to secrecy about my continued involvement. It was the perfect arrangement. I could guide the company I loved without the crushing pressure of being its public face. I could take vacations without my phone ringing off the hook. I could sleep past 5 a.m. I could breathe again. And then Matt, who had been working his way up in marketing at Coleman Industries, got promoted to Vice President of Operations, a move I hadn't personally signed off on, which should have been my first red flag. Matt had always been ambitious, but without the work ethic to match. He'd gotten the job at Coleman Industries because I'd given him a chance, believing family deserved at least one opportunity. A decision I was starting to seriously regret.
My phone rang.
It was Diane, my former executive assistant, and one of the few people who knew my secret. "Did you see the email from Marcus about the layoffs?" she asked without preamble. I sat up straight. What layoffs? In the engineering department. 30 people, effective next week. I thought you might have approved it, but your reaction tells me otherwise. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Who authorized this? The paperwork has Matt's signature. He's claiming it's a necessary cost-cutting measure. I closed my eyes, trying to control my anger. Engineering was our innovation hub, the heart of what made Coleman Industries special. We hadn't laid anyone off since our rocky first year, even during the recession when our competitors were slashing their workforces. Send me everything you have on this, I said, my voice hardening into the tone that had once made boardroom adversaries nervously reconsider their positions. After hanging up, I paced my balcony, thinking about Matt's smug face at dinner, his contemptuous dismissal of my unemployment, all while he was dismantling everything I had worked so hard to build. The irony wasn't lost on me. Matt thought I was a has-been, a washed-up entrepreneur who couldn't handle the pressure. He mocked me for being jobless while I secretly signed his paychecks. For 8 months, I'd let his jabs roll off my back. I'd found his arrogance annoying but ultimately harmless.
But now?
Now it was personal. Now it was about my company, my legacy. I walked back inside, opened my laptop, and pulled up the Coleman Industries internal server. It was time to find out exactly what my little brother had been up to. Because if Matt thought I was just his pathetic, jobless sister, he was about to discover how wrong he was. And the lesson would be anything but gentle. Mockery is a game the weak play when they think they're safe, I muttered, scrolling through document after document on my screen. Matt should have known. There's no such thing as safety in business. It was 3 a.m. My eyes burned from hours of reviewing financial reports, meeting minutes, and internal memos. What had started as an investigation into the engineering department layoffs had spiraled into something far more disturbing. The engineering layoffs weren't a cost-cutting measure at all. According to the budget reallocations following the cuts, the money saved, nearly $4.2 million annually, had been diverted to a new executive development program. A program that, conveniently, had no clear deliverables or oversight. I dug deeper. The executive development program included a membership to Pinnacle Club, the most exclusive golf course in the city, for Matt and 5 other executives. It covered strategic planning retreats at luxury resorts in Aspen, Cabo, and the Maldives. There were charges for private jet rentals, 5-figure dinner tabs, and this one made me clench my teeth, a $27,000 team-building exercise at a VIP nightclub. My company was paying for Matt's party lifestyle, but it got worse. I pulled up the organizational chart and compared it to the one from a year ago. Matt had systematically replaced experienced department heads with his friends from business school and the country club. People with minimal qualifications, but maximum loyalty to him. Alexander Chin, our brilliant chief technology officer who'd been with me since the start, was gone, replaced by Bryce Whitman, Matt's former roommate whose technical expertise seemed limited to posting Instagram stories of his Tesla. Diana Rodriguez, our meticulous chief financial officer, had been pushed out for Travis Kent, Matt's golf buddy who'd previously been fired from 2 financial firms for irregularities in his accounting practices. Sick to my stomach, I cross-referenced the new executive hires with their salaries. Son of a bitch, I whispered. Every one of Matt's friends was making at least 30% more than industry standard for their positions. Meanwhile, according to HR records, merit increases for regular employees had been frozen due to economic uncertainties. My phone rang, startling me.
It was Diane.
You're still up? She asked. How bad is it really, Diane? I couldn't keep the exhaustion from my voice. You see what's happening day to day. Is it as terrible as these documents suggest? She hesitated. It's worse, Rachel. The company culture you built is dying. People are afraid to speak up. Those who do get sidelined or fired. Morale is at rock bottom. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Would you have believed me? Matt is your brother.
And
she paused. You seem to be enjoying your break. I didn't want to pull you back into the stress unless I was absolutely certain. I closed my eyes, guilt washing over me. While I'd been decompressing, traveling, rediscovering simple pleasures like reading for fun and cooking elaborate meals, the company I'd built with my heart and soul was being corrupted from within. By my own brother. There's something else, Diane said, her voice dropping. I think they're preparing to sell off the Innovation Lab. My eyes flew open. The Innovation Lab was my pride and joy, a division of the company dedicated to developing technology that could help solve social problems. It wasn't immediately profitable, which I'd always insisted was fine. Some things were more important than the bottom line. He wouldn't dare, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I pulled up the latest executive meeting agenda and saw it there, innocuously labeled, Strategic Reassessment of Non-Revenue Divisions. They're meeting with Vertex Capital next week, Diane confirmed. Matt's calling it Streamlining Our Charitable Initiatives. Vertex Capital was known for buying promising technology, stripping it for parts, and selling off whatever made the most immediate profit. If they got their hands on our innovation lab, years of work towards sustainable energy solutions and accessible medical technology would be dismantled for quick cash. I'd seen enough. Diane, I need you to do something for me. It's time for Plan B. Plan B was something I'd put in place when I stepped down, a contingency measure if things ever went catastrophically wrong. I never thought I'd need it, especially not because of Matt. Are you sure? Diane asked. Once this starts, there's no going back. I thought about my brother's smug face at dinner, mocking my unemployment while he systematically destroyed everything I'd built. I thought about the engineers losing their jobs while Matt and his friends flew on private jets to strategic retreats. I thought about the innovation lab and all the good it could do in the right hands. I'm sure, I said firmly, but we need to be smart. If Matt realizes I'm investigating him, he'll cover his tracks. What's your plan? I glanced at the company organization chart again, studying the layout, the reporting structures, the departments most damaged by Matt's influence. A plan began to form in my mind. I need to see exactly what's happening from the inside. No reports, no secondhand information. I need to witness it myself. You don't mean... Yes, I said, determination hardening my voice. I'm going undercover at my own company, and Matt won't see me coming until it's too late. As I hung up, I looked at my reflection in the darkened window of my penthouse. The Rachel Coleman that Matt knew, successful, confident, always perfectly put together, would need to disappear. It was time to become someone else entirely. Someone invisible. Someone Matt would never suspect was watching his every move. Someone who would bring his empire of corruption crashing down around him. If they don't recognize me as their boss, I'll make sure they remember me as their downfall. The woman staring back at me in the mirror looked nothing like Rachel Coleman, former public face of Coleman Industries. My usually sleek, shoulder-length hair was now tucked under a mousy brown wig styled in an unremarkable bob. Contact lenses dulled my bright blue eyes to a forgettable gray. Thick-rimmed glasses, minimal makeup, and conservative, slightly ill-fitting clothes completed the transformation. Diane had pulled strings to get Rebecca Caldwell hired as an assistant in the finance department, a position with limited authority but maximum access to information. The real brilliance of the plan was its simplicity. No one looks twice at an assistant, especially one who keeps her head down and does her job without complaint. Remember, Diane had warned me the night before my first day, you're not Rachel Coleman anymore. Rachel walks into a room and owns it. Rebecca needs to blend into the wallpaper. As I rode the elevator up to the 32nd floor of the building that bore my name, I practiced making myself smaller. Shoulders slightly hunched, eyes downcast, steps measured instead of purposeful. Everything about my body language needed to say, "Don't notice me. I'm nobody important." The elevator doors opened, and I stepped into what should have been familiar territory. Instead, I barely recognized my own company. Gone were the collaborative workspaces I designed, replaced by rows of cubicles that reminded me of prison cells. The vibrant artwork from local artists had disappeared, substituted with generic corporate prints. Even the energy felt wrong, tense, fearful, nothing like the innovative buzz that once defined Coleman Industries. "You must be Rebecca." A harried-looking woman approached me. "I'm Melissa, head of accounting. You'll be supporting Travis Kent, our CFO. Fair warning, he's in a mood today. Actually, he's in a mood most days." Travis Kent, Matt's golf buddy with a questionable financial history. The man who'd replaced my trusted CFO. "Thank you for the heads up," I murmured, keeping my voice softer than my natural tone. "I'll do my best." "Your desk is there." Melissa pointed to a small workstation outside a glass-walled office. "Travis usually comes in around 10. Your job is to make his life easier, which mostly means managing his calendar, organizing his files, and getting his coffee exactly right. 1 pump of vanilla, 2 pumps of caramel, oat milk, not too hot. I bit back a retort. Rachel Coleman would never fetch coffee. Rebecca Caldwell, however, would smile and nod appreciatively at these instructions. And whatever you do, Melissa added in a whisper, don't mention Diana Rodriguez. Ever. My former CFO. The warning was noted. The morning crawled by as I familiarized myself with Travis's calendar and email systems. His password was taped to the bottom of his keyboard, Golf Pro 1, a security nightmare that made my job easier. By the time he strolled in at 10:45, I'd already mapped out his entire workflow. Travis Kent was exactly what I expected, mid-30s, overly groomed, with the artificial confidence of someone who's failed upward his entire life. He barely looked at me as I introduced myself, instead barking orders about meetings to reschedule and calls to return. And I need the Q3 projections for the board meeting tomorrow, he added, dropping into his leather chair. Matt wants them adjusted to show better growth in the Asian markets. Adjusted? I asked innocently, making a note. Massaged. He made a gesture with his hands. The real numbers aren't hitting targets. Matt needs something better to present. Just do what the previous reports did. Move some revenue forward. Delay some expenses. Accounting 101. My blood boiled. This wasn't accounting, it was fraud. And it was happening under my company's letterhead. Of course, I said, keeping my face neutral. I'll get right on it. Over the next few days, I became a shadow in the office. Always present. Never noticed. I volunteered for filing tasks that gave me access to confidential documents. I stayed late, ostensibly to organize Travis's chaotic office, actually to photograph evidence of financial manipulation. I ate lunch in the break room, quietly absorbing office gossip that painted a picture of widespread corruption. What I witnessed was even worse than I'd imagined. Matt rarely showed up before noon, and when he did, he spent most of his time closed in his office making personal calls or playing online poker. Travis and the other executives Matt had appointed regularly altered financial reports, inflating revenue figures while hiding mounting expenses. The Innovation Lab staff had been cut by 70%, with most of their budget diverted to executive strategic initiatives, which seemed to consist primarily of lavish client entertainment at strip clubs and casinos. Worst of all was the human cost. I watched talented employees being overlooked for promotions while Matt's cronies advanced. I saw dedicated workers putting in 60-hour weeks while executives took extended business development trips to wine country. I listened to people worry about layoffs while Travis approved a $2 million renovation of the executive floor. On my 5th day, I was filing documents in the conference room when Matt entered with his inner circle, unaware of my presence. The Vertex Capital deal is almost done, he announced, pouring himself a scotch from the bar cabinet. At 2 p.m. Once we sell off that money pit of an innovation lab, we'll have enough cash to take some serious distributions. What about the engineers who'll lose their jobs? Asked a woman I didn't recognize, the only person who seemed concerned. Matt laughed. Not our problem. Besides, my sister's the one who hired all those do-gooder types with their sustainable this and accessible that. Let her worry about them. Oh wait, she can't. She's too busy being unemployed. The room erupted in laughter. I kept my head down, my hands shaking with rage as I methodically photographed the meeting agenda outlining the Vertex Capital deal. If my sister knew how to run a real business instead of a charity, we wouldn't be cleaning up her mess, Matt continued. Now she's just a cautionary tale. What happens when women get promoted beyond their capabilities? I looked up then, unable to help myself, and for a heart-stopping moment, Matt's eyes met mine. But all he saw was Rebecca Caldwell, forgettable assistant, certainly not his sister gathering evidence to destroy him.
You, he snapped.
Get me the Vertex contract from Travis's office. I nodded meekly and backed out of the room, my mind racing. I had enough evidence. It was time to make my move, because now it wasn't just about saving my company, it was about saving its soul. Revenge is best served cold, and in this case, with a corporate restructuring memo attached. I worked through the weekend, transforming my penthouse living room into a command center. Evidence was organized meticulously, financial records showing fraud, emails documenting the systematic dismantling of company values, recordings of Matt belittling employees and bragging about his corrupt practices. Diane had connected me with our original legal team, who were both appalled and eager to help set things right. By Sunday night, everything was in place. I sent a single email from my personal account to the company-wide distribution list. Subject: Emergency Board Meeting, Monday, 9 a.m., mandatory attendance for all executives. The message was simple, direct, and signed with my full name, Rachel Coleman, majority shareholder. My phone exploded with calls within minutes. Matt first, then Travis, then each of Matt's cronies in succession. I let them all go to voicemail, savoring their increasingly panicked messages. Rachel? What the hell is this? You can't call a board meeting. You're not even with the company anymore. Miss Coleman, there must be some mistake. The shareholder agreement clearly states, Rachel, it's Matt. Call me back immediately. This isn't funny. I listened to each message with grim satisfaction, particularly Matt's progression from confused to angry to desperately placating. By his fifth call, he was practically begging. Sis, please, let's talk about this. Whatever you've heard, I can explain. We're family. Too late, little brother. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear. I dressed with careful precision. A sharply tailored black suit that radiated authority, my hair pulled back in its signature sleek style, my makeup flawless. Gone was Rebecca Caldwell with her hunched shoulders and forgettable presence. Today, I was Rachel Coleman, and I was taking back what was mine. The lobby buzzed with nervous energy as I walked through the doors of Coleman Industries. Security guards who had been watching Rebecca shuffle in unnoticed for days did double takes, then scrambled to attention. Miss Coleman, welcome back. Good morning, James. I replied calmly, remembering the guard's name as I always had. Beautiful day, isn't it? The elevator ride up was a study in restraint. I maintained my composure, even as my heart pounded with anticipation. When the doors opened on the executive floor, Melissa from accounting nearly dropped her coffee. Miss Coleman? But you're... She looked wildly around as if searching for Rebecca Caldwell. Also Rebecca, I confirmed with a small smile. Thank you for being so helpful during my time in finance. Your dedication hasn't gone unnoticed. I strode toward the boardroom, aware of the whispers erupting in my wake. Through the glass walls, I could see the executive team already assembled. Matt pacing nervously, Travis checking his watch, the others conversing in tense clusters. Diane met me at the boardroom door, handing me a sleek tablet with everything queued up. They're all here, she confirmed, and I've notified security to be ready. Thank you, I said, squeezing her hand. For everything. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room fell instantly silent. Matt froze mid-stride, his face draining of color as he registered my presence. Rachel, he finally managed. What is this about? Please, everyone, take your seats, I said, my voice cool and controlled. I moved to the head of the table, Matt's usual spot, and remained standing. This won't take long. You can't just waltz in here and start giving orders, Travis blustered, though he sat down anyway. You're not part of this company anymore. I smiled thinly. That's where you're wrong, Travis. I tapped my tablet, and the large screen on the wall displayed the shareholder agreement. I never sold my shares. I own 67% of Coleman Industries. I simply stepped back from day-to-day operations, allowing the executive team, originally comprised of qualified professionals I personally selected, to manage the company while I retained ultimate control. The room erupted in murmurs. Matt's face had progressed from pale to ashen. That's impossible, he stammered. The board would have. The board knew. I cut him off. The legitimate board members, that is. Not the golf buddies and drinking pals you've installed in positions they're wildly unqualified for. With another tap, the screen changed to show organizational charts before and after Matt's takeover. The systematic replacement of experienced leaders with his friends was starkly illustrated. Let me be clear about what's happened here, I continued, my voice gaining strength. In the 8 months since I stepped back, Matt Coleman and his associates have engaged in financial fraud, misappropriation of company funds, violation of our code of ethics, and creation of a hostile work environment.
Tap.
Financial records appeared, showing the creative accounting Travis had implemented.
Tap.
Expense reports revealing the executive retreats that were nothing more than luxury vacations.
Tap.
Documentation of the engineering department layoffs alongside records of the executive floor renovation.
Tap.
The contract with Vertex Capital to sell the Innovation Lab, dated for signing tomorrow. Rachel, I can explain, Matt started, but fell silent when I raised my hand. I've heard enough of your explanations, Matt. For weeks, actually. You see, I've been here, watching everything unfold. I removed a pair of glasses from my pocket, Rebecca Caldwell's glasses, and placed them on the table. The room went deadly quiet as recognition dawned on various faces. You were that new assistant? Travis whispered, horror creeping across his features. Rebecca Caldwell, at your service. I confirmed with a mocking half-bow. Thank you for sharing your passwords so carelessly, Travis. It made accessing the evidence much easier. Matt stood up suddenly, his chair scraping back. This is ridiculous. You can't spy on your own company. Actually, I can. It's my company. I leaned forward, placing both hands on the table. And as the majority shareholder, I am exercising my right to implement immediate corporate restructuring. The door opened, and security personnel entered, followed by members of the original board and executive team I'd assembled overnight. Effective immediately, Matthew Coleman is removed from his position, along with the following executives. I read off the list of Matt's cronies, watching their faces contort in disbelief. Security will escort you to clear out your offices. Your company access has already been revoked. And just like that, the power dynamic that Matt had cultivated so carefully crumbled before his eyes. You can't do this, he hissed, but his voice lacked conviction. I met his gaze steadily. I already have. The board has unanimously approved these changes. The legal team has verified their legitimacy, and security is waiting to escort you out. As Matt stood there, shock rendering him speechless, I couldn't resist one final twist of the knife. Oh, and Matt? About being unemployed. I smiled coldly. It's not as easy as it looks. Poetic justice? No, this is just good business. The boardroom had fallen into a stunned silence. Matt stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, struggling to form words that wouldn't come. The other executives, his hand-picked allies, looked equally shell-shocked, their expressions cycling between disbelief, anger, and dawning fear. Travis was the first to recover. This is outrageous. You can't just walk in here after months away and start firing people. We have contracts. We have rights. I raised an eyebrow. Contracts that you violated repeatedly through fraudulent practices, Travis. Would you like me to outline the specific clauses you've breached, or shall we discuss the criminal implications of falsifying financial statements to shareholders? He paled visibly. Because I'd be happy to have that conversation, I continued, my voice glacier cold. The SEC would find it fascinating, I'm sure. You wouldn't. Matt finally found his voice. It would tank the company's stock. You'd be hurting yourself. I turned to my brother, studying him as if seeing him for the first time. In many ways, I was the Matt I thought I knew, ambitious but decent, privileged but well-meaning, had never existed. This man before me was a stranger wearing my brother's face. Sometimes healing requires surgery. I replied simply. Coleman Industries will recover from the temporary shock. It won't recover from your continued leadership. Matt's face flushed red. This is about your ego, isn't it? You couldn't stand seeing me succeed where you burned out. You couldn't handle that I might actually be better at running this company than you. A few gasps echoed around the table. Even Matt's allies seemed shocked by his audacity. I laughed, a genuine, spontaneous sound that seemed to unnerve Matt more than anger would have. Better? I gestured to the screen still displaying the financial discrepancies. You call this success? Driving away top talent, defrauding investors, destroying company culture, and selling off our most innovative division to fund your lifestyle? That's not success, Matt. That's parasitism. Security had positioned themselves around the room, waiting for my signal. I nodded, and they stepped forward. "Mr. Coleman, if you'll come with us, please," the head of security said firmly. Matt's eyes darted around, looking for allies, for escape, for anything. Finding none, his shoulders slumped momentarily before he straightened up, adjusting his tie in a pitiful attempt to salvage his dignity. "This isn't over, Rachel," he hissed. "Dad will hear about this. The family will never forgive you." I met his gaze steadily. "I can live with that. What I couldn't live with was watching you destroy everything I built. Now please, don't make this more embarrassing for yourself than it already is." One by one, Matt and his executive team were escorted from the boardroom. Some went quietly, others blustered and threatened legal action. Travis attempted to return to his office, claiming he needed to collect personal items. "Everything in your office will be inspected and shipped to you," I informed him. "Given the evidence of document destruction found in the server logs last night, I'm afraid we can't risk you removing anything." Their security badges were deactivated as they were led through the lobby. Department heads were notified of the leadership change, and an all-staff email went out explaining that I had returned and was implementing immediate corrective action to address serious breaches of company policy. As word spread through the building, something unexpected happened. Employees began emerging from their offices and cubicles, lining the hallways as Matt and his cronies were escorted out. No one spoke. No one cheered or jeered. They simply watched in silent witness, their presence a testament to all they had endured. I stood at the executive floor balcony overlooking the main lobby, watching as my brother was walked through the front doors for the last time. The moment should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt a complicated mix of relief, regret, and resolve. Diane appeared at my side. "Human Resources needs your signature on the termination paperwork, and Legal has prepared the press release." "Thank you," I said, turning away from the scene below. "Has the Vertex Capital deal been canceled?"
Yes.
"They're not happy, but there's nothing they can do. The innovation lab is safe." I nodded, some of the weight lifting from my shoulders. Good. That's what matters most. Back in what had been Matt's office, my office, once again, I sat down to review the termination documents. Each signature felt like closing a chapter on a painful story. When I reached Matt's paperwork, I paused. Attached was his compensation history, revealing a salary and bonus structure far beyond what I had ever authorized. Next to it lay the file of an engineer who'd been laid off in the first round of cuts, a single mother with 3 kids and half Matt's salary.
My phone rang.
Matt's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. And again. Finally, I picked up. "Rachel, please." Matt's voice had lost all its arrogance, replaced by desperate panic. "You can't do this to me. I have payments due on the house, the boat, the investment property. My credit cards are maxed out."
I need this job.
"No, Matt," I replied calmly. "What you need is a lesson in consequences. Something you've managed to avoid your entire life." "I'm your brother," he pleaded. "Yes, you are. And families should hold each other to a higher standard, not a lower one. What am I supposed to do now?" His voice cracked. I thought about all the times he'd mocked my unemployment, his smug certainty that I had failed while he succeeded. "I hear the job market is challenging these days," I said, unable to resist the irony. "Perhaps you should try pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. I hear that works wonders." I ended the call and turned back to the termination papers. With a steady hand, I signed my name, making it official. Matthew Coleman was fired, and Rachel Coleman was back. I built this company once. Now I will rebuild it the right way. 3 months passed in a blur of 14-hour days, emergency meetings, and difficult decisions. Rebuilding Coleman Industries wasn't as simple as removing Matt and his cronies. The damage they'd done had seeped into every corner of the company. The financial records required extensive forensic accounting to untangle the web of misrepresentations. Clients who'd been neglected or overcharged needed reassurance. Talented employees who'd left during Matt's tenure had to be wooed back with more than just promises. Most importantly, the culture of fear and favoritism had to be dismantled, brick by toxic brick. I started with the engineering department. The 30 laid-off engineers were offered their jobs back with back pay and a formal apology. 22 accepted, bringing with them the institutional knowledge and innovative thinking that had made Coleman Industries special. The other 8 had found positions elsewhere, but I sent each a personal letter acknowledging the injustice they'd experienced. Next came the Innovation Lab. Instead of selling it off, I doubled its budget and appointed Alexander Chen, my former CTO whom Matt had pushed out, to lead a complete reinvigoration of our sustainability initiatives. When Alexander walked back through the doors, employees actually applauded. "It feels like coming home," he told me, emotion making his voice rough. "But a home that was broken into and vandalized. Then we'll repair it," I promised. Better than before. Day by day, piece by piece, we rebuilt. I implemented new financial controls, transparency measures, and policies to ensure no single person, not even me, could ever again abuse power so thoroughly. Equally important were the smaller, human touches, bringing back the local artwork that had been removed from the walls, reinstating the Friday afternoon innovation sessions where anyone could pitch ideas, creating anonymous channels for employees to report concerns without fear of retaliation. Throughout it all, Matt continued his campaign to undermine me. He hired attorneys to challenge his termination. They dropped him when they saw our evidence. He tried to turn our parents against me. They stayed painfully neutral. He even attempted to rally shareholders for a proxy fight. They laughed him out of the meeting. His calls became less frequent, his legal threats more desperate. Eventually, they stopped altogether. On a crisp autumn evening, I finally allowed myself to leave the office before midnight. The company wasn't fully healed. That would take years, but the bleeding had stopped. Quarterly results were stabilizing. Employee satisfaction scores were climbing. The Innovation Lab had just secured a major partnership with a renewable energy consortium. Coleman Industries would survive. More than that, it would thrive again. As I packed in my briefcase, Diane knocked on my office door. "Don't forget about dinner tonight," she reminded me. I grimaced. The monthly family dinner I'd been avoiding since the confrontation with Matt. "Is there any way I can get out of it? Your mother called 3 times today. I think that ship has sailed." I sighed.
Fine.
"But if Matt makes a scene, you'll handle it with the same grace you've handled everything else," Diane finished for me. "Besides, I think you might be surprised." 2 hours later, I stood on my parents' doorstep, a bottle of wine in one hand, my courage failing. Before I could reconsider, the door swung open. My father stood there, his face unreadable. "Rachel," he said simply, then pulled me into an unexpected hug. "It's good to see you." Inside, my mother fluttered around the dining room, arranging flowers and straightening already perfect place settings, her way of managing anxiety. What struck me immediately was the table set for 3, not 4. "Matt's not coming?" I asked, trying to keep the relief from my voice. My parents exchanged glances. "He moved to Phoenix last week," my father said carefully. "A fresh start," he called it. My mother finally stopped fussing with the table. "He's not well, Rachel. The drinking has gotten worse. He won't take our calls most days." A complicated knot of emotions tangled in my chest: satisfaction, guilt, concern, relief. "I didn't want this," I said quietly. "I just wanted to save my company." "We know," my father said, surprising me. "We've read the reports, seen the evidence you sent." What he did was... He trailed off, shaking his head. "We raised him better than that." My mother touched my arm. "We should have stood by you sooner. We just couldn't believe he was capable of such things." Dinner was subdued but healing. For the first time in months, no one asked about my employment status or made snide remarks about my career choices. Instead, my parents asked thoughtful questions about the company's recovery, listened attentively to my plans for the Innovation Lab, and even offered suggestions from their own business experiences. As we finished dessert, My father poured a final round of wine and raised his glass. To Rachel, he said solemnly, who built something worth fighting for and then fought for it. My mother smiled, tears in her eyes. And to second chances. For all of us. I clinked my glass against theirs, emotion tightening my throat. The victory over Matt had been necessary but hollow. This reconciliation with my parents felt like the real win. Later that night, as I stood on my penthouse balcony overlooking the city lights, my phone buzzed with a text. An unknown number, but I knew immediately who it was from. I'm sorry.
For everything.
Two simple words that couldn't undo the damage, couldn't restore lost trust or heal all wounds. But perhaps they were a start. I considered responding, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Finally, I typed, I know. Build something of your own this time.
R.
I set down my phone and picked up my wine glass, raising it toward the city skyline where the Coleman Industries building stood illuminated against the night. To unemployment, I toasted softly to myself. And to whatever comes next. Because sometimes the greatest power isn't in winning, it's in deciding what victory truly means.